Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Zaro, and today we will be talking to you about SMS integration with Koha in our Power and Partnerships webinar series. This is the last of our Power and Partnerships series as we wrap up 2024. I'd like to thank my colleagues here with me today, Adam Brooks, Elisa Ayo, and Kyle Hall. We'll all be monitoring chat as we go through our slides, as we talk about SMS integration. If you have questions, let us know, and we will jump right into everything. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is current functionality within your Koha system. Several releases ago, Koha developed a way for users to be able to send out native SMS messages within the system. There's a system preference called SMS driver, which when set to enable, allows you to enter in and create cellular providers within administration, and staff or administrators can enter in those providers. Within the patron's account, you can also collect the cellular number and provider within their account information. If you have this turned on for either Koha's OPAC or Aspen Discovery, you'll also be able to see that information there. All of those messages are managed in tools, notices, and slips. So you can customize those SMS messages that are going out. Now, over the years, we've noticed that there are some issues with using the email gateway. So essentially, what we provided for that, current way, which is the email to SMS, where we're collecting the cellular provider and number and then sending it out via email. This essentially allows you to send out a text message from the Koha system. We have noticed that certain cellular providers in different areas throughout the country are discontinuing email to SMS functionality. Some are being flagged as spam, and some are just getting blocked. So the point of today's webinar is to identify some of the vendors that work well with this service in Koha, so we can talk about ways that you can effectively send out messages to your patrons. So the first thing we'll talk about is integrations. Koha can do this in various ways through robust APIs that we have created and the ability to generate customs reports. This allows us to connect to some of these outside vendors. So first, we'll talk about some of the vendors that we have integration with that our libraries are using to send out SMS and or email or phone automations. The first vendor we'll talk about is PatronPoint. PatronPoint currently uses an API connection to connect to a Koha system. You can enable system preferences and create an API user in the Patrons module that connects to PatronPoint. This allows you to automate email, SMS, and phone messages. Notices are maintained in PatronPoint. Now, PatronPoint was recently acquired by SpringShare, but it still provides all of the great services that they're known for. They provide email automation, which allows you to notify and send messages out to your users. You can use a campaign builder to send out templates, all types of like web forms and surveys, and it automatically syncs to the Koha ILS, which again is a great way to connect to make sure that you're getting the data out of your Koha system to effectively send those messages out. If you're a current partner with Bywater Solutions and you want to set this up, you can submit a ticket and we will help you work with that. The next vendor we'll talk about is Twilio. So this is set up on Koha's backend. There's two different things that allows us to interact with Twilio. First, we'll talk about SMS and phone. There's a plugin that allows you to automate voice and an additional plugin which allows interactive automated SMS messaging with the ILS. All of the notices are maintained in Koha. So again, for our current users, in the Tools module, you go into Notices and Slips, and you notice when we look at any of those messages in there, we can customize those messages. So Twilio will populate those messages to go out. Twilio is a customer engagement platform that allows you to build in voice and text to send out to your services. The plugin allows Koha to send those phone notices out via the Twilio Service API. So again, if you're interested in setting up another service, Twilio is one that we have worked with that helps us automate those messages out to your users. The third vendor we'll talk about today is MessageBee. Now, we utilize a Koha plugin for this and system preferences, which allows Koha to send metadata to MessageBee. You can send email, SMS, and phone messages, and your notices are maintained in MessageBee. So MessageBee is a suite of communications, including, of course, email, text, print, and voice, and MessageBee templates and features like multiple languages, bringing in your branding and messaging, sending out like your welcome information, and all types of things can be set up to message your users. So again, MessageBee is another solution that will work for SMS integration. Now, there are additional vendors out there that provide SMS services and/or automated calls or emails. Shoutbomb is one that we have several libraries using for text messages only. Now, we are in communication with Shoutbomb to streamline the implementation and talk about options to build a plugin to make it easier for that communication between the Koha system and Shoutbomb. There are also generic SMS send support providers. These are going to be providers like Red Oxygen or MessageBird. We actually have a link that we can share in chat with, there's a whole suite of providers that provide this type of support. And then finally, an oldie but goodie. So if you've been on Koha for a long time, this might have been one of the early versions that was in Koha, and that's the ability to connect to Talking Tech, which now goes by Ilian or /Itiva. And this allows automated phone calls via FTP and reports. So there are many ways that you can send out messages to your users using Koha through these vendors. The first three that we provided allow Bywater to work kind of seamlessly with those vendors. There's still some setup that we do on our end as we're working with your library to make sure that the connection happens. And again, making sure that we can get these messages out to your users. Now I'm going to pause for a second and just talk a little bit about our next webinar series, which is coming up, where we're going to talk about the fundamentals of both Koha and Aspen in our Back to Basics series. So if you're interested in signing up for any of those, please make sure you do. And I'm going to pause now also and see if there are any questions for us about SMS vendors or working with your Koha system. Oh, Sarah has a question. Can you comment on the amount of setup required between the library and the vendor? Sarah, that's a great question. I'll start the conversation and then I'll let Kyle jump in. So for the first three vendors that we talked about, Patron Point, let me go back here. Patron Point, there we go. And a few others, it allows us pretty easy setup. Some of these vendors like Shoutbomb, Talking Tech, those require a lot more time for setup. But folks like MessageBee and Patron Point are a little bit easier for us to connect to. I'll let Kyle jump in to talk a little bit more about like setup.
Yeah, I would agree. Each service has its own different level of work that needs to be done for setup. The services where there's an SMS send driver are probably, as a general rule, the least amount of effort because it's basically you go and you create an account on that service, and then you provide us credentials. We plug those into a configuration file on the back end, and Koha is suddenly sending text messages. Services that don't use those drivers include, well, Twilio actually uses that for the
Mhm.
sending of SMS. Twilio is complicated for other reasons. I'll table that for the moment and go on to uh, MessageBee and
Mhm.
Patron Point. Both have completely different methods for getting the data out of Koha to send an SMS message. For those ones that use that driver, we basically send an API request to some service with the text message and the number it goes to. They handle all the rest. Patron Point uses Koha's REST API to extract messages that are already in Koha to send. MessageBee, we actually send them data loads with all the data they might need for a notice. Again, they have the notice templates on their side. So that's where it's very different from the other ones we've talked about. On the other ones, the notice templates within Koha are the ones that are used for MessageBee and for Patron Point. They're managing their own templates. It doesn't use the templates within Koha. And so, like I said, Patron Point uses APIs. MessageBee, we actually send them files every, depending on your configuration, 15 to 60 minutes. So it's not real time, but it's pretty darn fast.
Mhm. And I just shared a link in the Zoom chat. Katrina, who's one of our lead educators, put together a really good blog post which covers some of the communication and how messages are sent out. And that covers a lot of what we're talking about here today. We have another question. For instances where branches work separately from one another, is there a way to integrate multiple vendors or a way to exclude certain branches? So Kyle, probably for like consortiums.
So not for most of it. Where here, I just want to reread that. For instances where branches work separately from each other, is there a way? So not at this. I'm gonna just state blanket, not at this time.
Hmm.
That is certainly something that could be developed and would be really useful. The hardest part about that is that, and we've talked about this in developer meetings over and over, is who owns a particular notice? Is it the library? Is it the patron's home library? Is it there's a book on hold? Is it the holding library? Is it the owning library of that book? What if it's an overdue notice with items from five libraries? Who? So that's a can of worms that we can set back on the shelf, but it's an interesting thing to talk about. And I love to talk about it. The one thing that is doable right now is MessageBee and a different service. So because the MessageBee setup works in a very different way from everyone else, where
Hmm.
we use the Koha SMS templates within Koha. That's a weird sentence. Uh, it basically it is like a template of data that we want to send to MessageBee, and it has an on-off switch. So you could have some things go through MessageBee and some libraries using a different service. So that is a weird edge case. Um, Outside of that, there isn't a way to do that right now, but it would be a really cool feature. And I'm sure that there are some people interested in it right now. Um, what else was on here for the so cell vendors blocking messages right now. That is really specific to that SMS to email gateway feature. That is something I actually wrote over a decade ago. Well, pretty close. I found a blog post from 2016 where I was like, you should use this. It is great. And then I found a blog post from last year where it's like, you should not use this. It is not great anymore. What happened is capitalism, uh, library, the way it would work is like AT&T has a specific email address for your phone number. Verizon has a
Right.
specific email address for your phone number. So
Hmm.
you could send an email to these and it would pop out as an SMS on your phone. And so there was a place where you can configure all the different cell phone providers that your area supports. And so when someone signed up and they wanted an SMS notice, you would say, okay, what's your number? And who's it through? Is it through Verizon? Is it through AT&T? And so we would know where to send those messages. Well, these cell phone providers noticed like, hey, we're getting a lot of emails from this same place, this library. We're going to cut them off and we're going to tell them they have to pay us or we won't send those
Oh,
messages through. So that's basically what has happened. Is
okay.
uh, the the cellular providers realized they could monetize this service and kind of ruined it for us. Unless you're in Ohio, because Ohio provides an SMS to email or an email to SMS gateway service that is not like through vendors. So that's basically the only place where it works reliably at
Okay.
this time. And that's why we don't recommend it anymore because it might your patrons might get their messages and they might not, and there's nothing that we can do about it, which is very frustrating. What else do we have in here? Uh, yeah, I'm going to talk about that Twilio one, and I think this actually applies to other services too now, but I don't have experience outside of Twilio. I think even maybe Shoutbomb. Basically, there's a lot more backend setup because there is a lot of legal red tape that has been added. When I first started adding Twilio support to Koha, like you could just do whatever you wanted. You could send an SMS message to anybody you wanted, and it was fine. And then the laws changed and said, like, we're going to regulate this. So now you need to basically, it is is it B2C, business to customer, there or A2P? It it's letters and numbers, and I'm sure that we can look it up at some point.
Yeah.
But the long and short of it is you need to fill out a form that says this is what I am going to be using SMS to bulk send to my patrons for. Uh, it, in most cases, it's like I'm a company. My customers have signed up for this, and I'm going to send it to them. As libraries, we have a little bit of a different case, but I haven't had any issues with getting approval. It does take a while. So you fill out all this stuff, you give them some examples of your messages, and then you wait a week or two, and usually you get approved at that point. Yes, 10 DLC, A2P. So we live in an alphabet soup of protocols and rules. Um, so that's really it. I have personally gotten a lot better at it. And if anyone needs someone to Sherpa them through that process, we are here to help. What else is on here? Once patron pointer message B is set up, how does the cutover from Koha to these services happen? Where there'll be any missed messages or duplicate net messages? No, the cutover can be, so I can't speak to patron points specifically, but because the services work in a different method than like your traditional outgoing SMS, they can sort of happen simultaneously. So you can have a gradual cutover. For example, message B, you could even do a cutover on a message by message basis if you really wanted to. A lot of time, if you have test servers, you can test ahead of time. We
Mhm.
we are willing to do a full flip the switch, and if it doesn't work, then we just put it back until we debug the issue. Message B can absolutely do just SMS. I believe they also do phone. I believe they also do print. Like they can mail print
Yeah.
letters to your patrons. Uh, let's see. Um, I think, I am not sure about Rhonda's question about Twilio. I haven't I can't tell you what our most um volumetric, that's not the right word. We would need to figure out what partner we have using Twilio that has the highest volume of like throughput is and figure out where it is. What I can tell you is I haven't heard any problems. So hopefully they have gotten better.
Mhm.
Oh, and Christopher thankfully answered with his thank you. Let's see. Is there anything else? I think that's everything so far.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, thank you so much for um, joining us as our resident expert on SMS and connections with Koha's integrations with SMS providers, email, and making sure we get all of those messages out. I want to do a quick plug again for our Back to Basics webinar series, which starts in January of 2025. We'll be covering everything from Koha to Aspen. We even have some LibKey and Metabase webinars in there as well. You can register for all of those webinars that are coming up in the next few months. And as always, if you have any other questions, I saw somebody in there that was getting ready to make the migration to Koha. Adam Brooks is able to help you get any of those questions answered. And of course, if you're a partner and have a question, please submit a ticket at support@bywatersolutions.com, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions or help you get set up with one of the vendors that we spoke about today.